You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Massive red alert. Analysts sound an alarm as court sends Trump a galling signal, based on an article by Robert Davis. The court is not confused. It is testing the boundaries of rule by fiat. Power, not drama. The source story is about a Supreme Court that is not merely sending a signal, but showing how far it is willing to go to normalize constitutional sabotage. Trump wants birthright citizenship erased by executive order. 4 justices, according to the reporting, were willing to entertain that premise even though the Constitution sets a different path. Amendments require the actual amendment process, not a president's signature and a compliant bench. That is the central fact. The issue is not legal complexity. It is institutional power deciding whether law still means law when a strongman demands an exception. Who enabled this? The actor with real leverage here is the court. Trump can demand rehearing all he wants. His power depends on whether the justices indulge him. The report makes clear that the court already did the enabling by taking up a case that should have been dead on arrival, if constitutional fidelity were the standard. That matters because judicial legitimacy is not some ceremonial asset. It is the mechanism that turns anti-constitutional ambition into plausible procedure. When the court agrees to entertain the rewrite, it launders authoritarian intent through the language of jurisprudence. Executive order as constitutional vandalism. The source notes the obvious constitutional barrier. Amendments are not made by executive order, and they are not made by judicial mood. They require a state convention process and ratification by 2/3 of the states. That is not trivia. It is the whole point of constitutional government. Trump's demand that the court rehear the case is not a legal argument in the ordinary sense. It is an attempt to move the Constitution out of the hands of the people and into the hands of a president and a few justices willing to flirt with obliteration. That is not interpretation. It is institutional vandalism dressed up as legal doctrine. The misdirection. The reporting frames the moment as a galling signal and quotes analysts reacting to the danger. That is true, but it is also too soft. A signal is what one sends when one wants to test the room. The court is not accidentally drifting, it is being used, and in turn using Trump's attack on birthright citizenship to see how much of the constitutional order it can strip for parts. The misdirection lies in treating this as if it were mainly about judicial philosophy, or a deeply flawed court in the abstract. The concrete story is simpler and uglier. Powerful actors are probing whether a written constitutional guarantee can be made optional when it becomes politically inconvenient for nativist rule. The pattern. This is the familiar authoritarian sequence in institutional clothing. First, attack a clearly protected right. Second, force the legal system to dignify the attack by hearing it. Third, blur the line between amendment and interpretation until law becomes whatever the dominant faction can get 5 votes to tolerate. That pattern does not just endanger birthright citizenship. It tells every anti-democratic operator that the Supreme Court can be pressured into treating the Constitution as a suggestion. A democracy does not survive long when its highest court starts auditioning for the role of accomplice. What this reveals. The larger lesson is not that one case is alarming. It is that institutions fail when they confuse deference with legitimacy and procedure with principle. The court has the power to reject this kind of constitutional theft outright. If it does not, then the problem is not a legal gray area. It is the willingness of elite institutions to help normalize executive lawlessness when it serves the right project of exclusion. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Raw Story for today's article. With the automated voice of Lesak, thanks for listening.